What's going on, everybody? My name is Tenebris, and welcome back to Generation Zero. With the latest update for Generation Zero, we got a ton of new locations to explore and old locations revamped so that we could go back to them and enjoy them anew. So, with most of these updates, we wind up getting some spots that are easier to find and some spots that are a little bit more difficult to find. So today we're going to be going over 6 of those difficult to find locations that you potentially might have missed out on from the February update. We're going to be pointing out some incredibly overpowered farmables. We're going to be talking about some really interesting and spicy lore stuff, and some world building stuff. It's going to be a good video here, my dudes. There's some really fantastic locations that have been added in the most recent update. If there's one thing that I could really praise the team for so far, is maintaining a really good consistency with each of their facelifts, and cramming in just as much detail as they possibly can into these updates. So for the first location we're coming to is klockarstugan. Klockarstugan was kind of left to the wayside throughout the past couple of facelifts we saw throughout the farmlands here, but the final facelift that it's gotten here is really dang good. And alongside with how good this revamp is, there's also this really mysterious suitcase here. And this suitcase is the exact same suitcase that we saw for the In the Face of Adversity side mission, where you have to ride your bike and go through a bunch of checkpoints and stuff. It's really interesting finding it here at klockarstugan, and I almost wonder if maybe this is like a sneak peek towards a final mission location, potentially in the future. Because we could potentially see more rewards like what we saw from In the Face of Adversity. Now, you might be wondering, why is this location so good? Well, there happens to be 2 advanced first aid kits in the entirety of klockarstugan here. There is one back in the house right by the dead resistance fighter, and then there is one down in the house by the pier. And both of those advanced first aid kits respawn. As far as I know, they only respawn on quit to menu, but they might also respawn with fast travel too, so you dudes might want to experiment with that a little bit using some field radios. But yeah, this is just a fantastic spot to come through, pick up a couple advanced first aid kits and a couple simple first aid kits that you could then wombo combo together into a good old medkit sandwich. Medkit stacking will always be the most optimal way to heal, and the fact that you can pick up free advanced first aid kits and free simple first aid kits here to make yourself that medkit stack that you're going to need is really nice. It's just a really good quality of life convenience that you can come through and pick up here at klockarstugan. You can find klockarstugan just outside of Boo. Now, with the last location, it wasn't so much the location that was easily missed, but it's more so the advanced first aid kits and the fact that they respawn. Now, for this next location though, the battle above Sorken, this is one of those locations that you could easily miss out on as you're going through and exploring the farmlands. So overall, the outside of Sorken has seen a pretty major facelift here. We have this kind of little battle scene going on, and it seems like things are kind of in the process of being established here just outside of Sorken. But as they were establishing themselves, it seems like they fell under attack. Now, outside of Sorken, you're getting a ton of fresh new lootables here, and some of the best lootables as well, as most dead bodies are actually some of the best loot sources in the game. And so you just get yourself a whole bunch of dead soldiers that you can loot and pilfer from as you make your way through Sorken here. Now, as you make your way through Sorken to find the battle above Sorken, you're going to want to head down the tunnel A1, which is just to the right as you head in through the right entrance into Sorken. When you make your way out the door here, you start to kind of see a little bit more of a battle unfolding. There are tanks here, like Swedish army tanks, and there are dead bodies. Is that a hunter? Dang it. Alright. I guess I'm gonna have my own battle above Sorken here. Alright, now with the hunters out of the way, of course, I can't do a locations video without getting interrupted by machines. Let's go off and check out the rest of this battle scene up here. Now, I really like the battle scene above Sorken for a number of reasons. The first reason is that you can totally imagine how this battle played out. The tanks came stomping through, lighting everything on fire, launching rockets and shooting their machine guns, probably caught the soldiers off guard, and then wound up taking them out. But the really nice thing, the kind of secondary good thing to the battle above Sorken, is the fact that it's a sign of the Swedish army actually taking down machines and actually having effective skirmishes with them. Now, these scenes of the Swedish army actually having effective skirmishes with the machines is actually only a recent thing, and I'm sure that a lot of new players wouldn't even know that. But these scenes of the Swedish army actually having effectivity in combat here has only started as of the Farmlands revamps and the Farmland facelifts that we've seen. And personally, I'm a big fan. I think that more scenes of the Swedish army being effective against these machines will allow us as the players to have some returned confidence into the Swedish army themselves. And then a final kind of really badass thing about Sorken here is that there's this one rock that is straight up a Batman perch over the entrance to Sorken here. It's a really sick spot to just catch some footage, take a picture, you know, just kind of vibe out at, and you might want to show your buddies the spot. Now, you should know where Sorken is, as it's part of the main mission line, but Sorken is just right here, just a little bit south of Boo. Now, I've kind of structured this video having like two really useful locations, and then the third location being a really spicy, lore-related location, and man, this location is spicy, but it's also super weird. And then to double down on it, it's also kind of hard to find this spot. So you can find the pathway to this location just in between Petterstorp and Stenbacka. It's kind of hard to tell out where this path actually is, but as long as you look for this one birch tree, you'll be able to see the path just beside it. Now, as we follow this pathway down, we come across a really weird scene. Now, some of you that might have watched my previous videos on unique locations across the farmlands will remember me talking about Petterstorp and this really weird kind of suicide scene of a whole bunch of people sitting around with saucers and apples around them. But this scene adds a whole new curveball to this really weird apple scene that I actually have some pretty wild theories on. Now, we've seen weird effigies like these before off at another location called Vostra Mark. Now, hear me out because this is where things are going to kind of go off the rails a little bit, but I kind of think that Vostra Mark, Petterstorp, and then this unnamed location here are all connected. I know, wow, Tenebris with the big 200 IQ, but I've also kind of deduced a little bit of a theory about what's even actually going on here at Vostra Mark, Petterstorp, and this location. Now, let's really quickly talk about what my original theory was for these apple deaths, for those that potentially missed out on my recent video on the locations and stuff. So basically, what my first theory was that these were potential Ljuset Commune members that maybe were all getting together and taking some sort of like a death pact or something like that. But my new theory is a little bit more interesting than that. So my new theory is that there might be a serial killer loose in Ostertorn. I know. What the heck? Like a serial killer in Generation Zero? But I think is kind of credible from the locations that we've been checking out here. So basically, with these locations, there's a number of consistencies alongside them all. And the one thing that kind of connects them all is the orchestration of the deaths. All of the dead bodies are positioned and set up in really weird manners. And so this kind of leads me to believe that there might potentially be somebody going around killing people and then positioning their bodies like this, as opposed to them somehow making a death pact, taking some sort of a like suicide serum, and then setting up all the stuff and then dying. I feel like it just makes more sense for there to be somebody else out there actually committing these murders. So, who knows? It could possibly be some disgruntled, extra crazy Ljuset Commune member. Or it could be somebody out there that maybe has a vendetta against the Ljuset Commune. Maybe potentially these people that are winding up dying here are trying to join the Ljuset Commune. Because one of the interesting things also about this unmarked location is that all of the dead bodies are, like, there's a huge variety here. We've got a Russian dead body, a cop, a soldier, a resistance member. We've got a wide variety of dead bodies here. So potentially all of these people were coming off to the Ljuset Commune to try to join up with them. It's really hard to say what exactly is happening here because all we get is the visual storytelling. But I really hope that we'll have the window blown open on this one pretty soon, because it would be really cool to find out, like, either side, whether or not it's the Ljuset Commune making death pacts, or it's possibly some sort of a serial killer in the middle of a machine apocalypse. Now, I want to know, what do you dudes think about my theory? Maybe let me know in the comments down below. But for now, the location for this unmarked location is just in between Petterstorp and Stenbaka. And again, you look for that birch tree and you follow the pathway down and you cannot miss it. Now, for our fourth location on the list today, we're coming over to Vidsele. It's not so much Vidsele, though, that is the really interesting thing here. Don't get me wrong, Vidsele is great, and it's awesome to see that whoever had been staying off at Vidsele had clearly just been in a massive rush. They grabbed just like little bits of furniture that they could, probably from Ostermark, and just grabbed whatever they could and ran and went off to the closest safe place they could find. Vidsele just happened to be a little bit closer than Sorken. I really dig it because it's simple and it's easy to wrap your head around, and I think that there's a good blend that we have in Generation Zero of the simple set pieces that you can kind of tell what's going on, and the more complicated ones like the last one we had where you just kind of scratch your head at it. Now, the real interesting thing about Vidsele is this little battle scene that we have right here between the police and some member here. And this is a really interesting set piece because it pays homage to a previous set piece that you find on the archipelago. Now, this battle scene, just like the one on the archipelago, looks like it was a brutal battle with no clear victor from the skirmish. If we take a look back at the archipelago, you can see here that it's pretty much a similar scene, just with more bodies. Now, these people are dressed really fancy considering the fact that they were going off to fight the police. But there's another thing too. On the archipelago set piece, we can find a dead Ljuset Commune member, so potentially this new scene is also equally tied to the Ljuset. One thing we can know for certain, though, was that your boy was sauced as heck when he was fighting these police. Might have actually been his downfall. Now, this scene is also great because there's just a bunch of bodies that you can go off and loot for free. It's literally right outside of a safe house, so you can just fast travel to the safe house, go off and loot the dead bodies, wait for the cooldown to end, and then go back and rinse and repeat. Now, of course, I do have another theory about this location, but that's all going to come into play with our final location of the day. But we'll talk about that in a minute. For now, Vidsele is just right here in the farmlands. It's right near Sorken. It's just down the road, basically. You cannot miss it. Now, for our second last location of the day, it's not so much a particular location, but more so a couple of small locations that all come together to create this perfect storm of some of the best advanced medkit farming that you can find here in Generation Zero. Now, this guy right here is really great to see in the game finally. We finally have an actual set spawn for a railgun tank that is not attached to a mission or anything. And the beauty of it too is that this tank seemingly respawns. So when you kill him and you take him down, if you quit to menu and then jump back into the game, he'll be wandering around the exact same field again. So if you combine the advanced first aid kit that you can get from this guy with the advanced first aid kits that I told you about with the first location in this video, that's 3 advanced first aid kits that you're getting absolutely for free. In all honesty, taking down the railgun tank is not an insane challenge, especially once you get like kind of used to fighting railgun tanks, especially because there's all these hay bales around and they are ridiculously good sources of cover, my dudes. So even though he's got such an intimidating weapon, this tank is pretty much free. The main benefit of him is the fact that you finally get the opportunity to practice against a tank with a railgun. You get the chance to practice strats, you get a chance to see if your vanguard is up to snuff and is able to deal with a full-on railgun shot, and then on top of that, you just get the ability to fight an enemy with a really cool weapon. You could just find him in the farmlands, like right outside of Vidsele. And then right next to that is this incredibly interesting unmarked location. So again, the visual storytelling from the GZ team is superb. So when you come on over here, you find this crash jet. Ah, dang it. Well, I get to show you how I personally fix my falling through the earth problem when it hits me. I just fast travel back to Itervik, and I find that that usually is the problem solver for the terrain becoming like unstable. It's only been recently that you can do the whole Itervik fast travel, but it's worked every single time for me. So if you dudes ever run into this issue, just fast travel to Itervik. As we make our way back to the barn here, just to show you dudes, the railgun tank does not respawn with fast travel, but again, he does definitely respawn with quitting to menu. So where was I? Right. Okay, so these 2 people clearly came off to the crash jet to check out what was going on. They got taken out by machines, and sadly, even though they were doing a good thing, they wound up paying the ultimate price for it. But the other really interesting thing about this spot is the barn itself. It's actually just this absolutely fantastic sniper spot. You can kind of just perch out in the window here and snipe any big machines around you. I'm pretty sure you could probably kite that the railgun tank over to here too, in case if you're having a hard time taking him down and you maybe need some building cover. Yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic spot to kind of set up fights at. And the last thing to kind of round this spot off as the perfect trifecta, this kind of strange scene here where there is a power pole that's on fire, and potentially maybe that's the pilot. Who knows? Maybe the pilot like ejected and then wound up hitting the electrical tower and then hit the power line and caught on fire, which is really grim. But the awesome thing about this spot is this little campsite right beneath it. There are 6 advanced first aid kits here, and all of them respawn. So that's right, my dudes. In this video, I've given you the location for freaking 9 advanced first aid kits that are all farmable. Now, as per usual, whenever I find something that respawns in the game, I just have to give you dudes a clear warning. This might potentially get removed from the game. So, for the time being, farm like mad. Come through and farm like mad. If you do this run like 10 times, you get yourself 90 advanced first aid kits. You can't go wrong. So this whole area is just kind of focused around this little chunk of farmland right on the very border of the farmlands themselves. Now, for the final location of today's video, we've got one of the biggest moves that the Iron Church has seemingly made so far through all of the facelifts. We finally have a camp of operations for the Iron Church here on the mainland. Before now, the only base that we've known of for the Iron Church so far has been the submerged church that was over on Himfell that currently is inaccessible. So this is huge, actually. This is really, really big, and it shows that the Iron Church does still have a lot of activity going on. Now, some of you dudes might know that one of the big things that I really want to see this year is the solidification of the Iron Church into the game. I want to see them become a faction. I think that they're super interesting. And so seeing a forward base of operations here with all the weights and stuff like that, it's got your boy pretty excited. Now, in terms of informational and set-piece storytelling, that's pretty much it. So on the surface, this seems like it's not too much to talk about. It's like, oh yeah, well, the Iron Church is here, but we kind of already knew that the Iron Church was here because we've seen their hunter swords around. But I think that there's something more here that is potentially even more important than the Iron Church actually having a base here. But really quickly, before we get into that, let's jump back to set piece number 4, just outside of Vidsele, with the police and their dead bodies sitting around. So one of the things that I've theorized is that the Iron Church is potentially built off of police members. And with us having a base of operations for the Iron Church, and then having that shootout scene just like literally earshot away from this location, I just feel like that's a coincidence. That's a big coincidence. And considering the only Iron Church members we've seen so far have been Polis members, I think that it's kind of credible to assume that that the fight that happened there, the shootout that happened there, was between potentially the Ljuset Commune and the Iron Church. And this all kind of doubles down because back when we got the Archipelago facelift, I had kind of made the theory that this was the Ljuset and the Iron Church fighting it out over on the mainland. And since we're seeing the same, or at least a really similar set piece, 2 times in a row here, and we've got the Iron Church's base of operations, like, come on, my dudes, come on. I feel like it's pretty grounded to say that these Polis members are actually Iron Church members. But then for that final spicy thing that I think potentially has a little bit more gravity to it than you would assume. All of these stinking planters, my dudes! So first off, let's talk about how this applies to the Iron Church themselves. This shows that the Iron Church are self-preserving. They're able to provide for themselves and make food for themselves. So it doesn't really matter how long this machine apocalypse is going to last. As long as they can continue producing food for themselves, the strategy might be to just wait out the machine apocalypse. Or at least be the best surviving group out of the apocalypse due to the fact that they constantly have food. Now here's my other thought, and of course you probably could see it coming, but base building, my dudes! So basically, with these planters, if we got to use them for base building, we could grow food in these planters, and then we would be able to provide for any resistance members that we would be bringing over to our base. Food could serve tons of purposes in base building, whether or not we're sending out resistance members on raids and so we have to provide food for them for that raid, or if we need a certain amount of food capita in order to be able to provide for a certain number of resistance members, or maybe we could use the food to potentially heal resistance members after they've come back from raids. Food could potentially serve a huge purpose in Generation Zero outside of just the player being able to eat that food. This could turn around to be a sort of currency system almost for base building if base building actually gets introduced here. You can find this Iron Church outpost just right in the middle of the road that kind of runs alongside Lake Avern here. It's just a jog away from all the other locations we've been talking about, so you owe it to yourself to go here and check things out, and maybe theorize for yourself on what this could possibly mean for the future. But there you dudes go. 6 fantastic new, kind of hidden locations, or at least locations with hidden purposes, that have been introduced in the most recent update for Generation Zero. Hopefully I showed you dudes some new locations that you maybe haven't discovered for yourselves yet, or if I have been talking about things you've already discovered, maybe I've pointed out some conjecture that you haven't thought of yet. And then on top of that, hopefully the 9 medkits will serve you well. I mean, 9 free advanced first aid kits. You really can't get any better than that. So cheers folks, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you all in the next one. Until then, peace.